I'm gonna tell you guys the truth. I really wanted to power through and watch this second season of Netflix Avatar: The Last Airbender because I wanted to see Toph. I hear good things about Toph and her execution in this show, but I watched one episode and that was enough for me, man. I know that when the first season came out, I didn't do a video on it because I didn't really do a video on anything at that point in time. So there's a lot of things that I missed out on talking about, like Deadpool and Wolverine, Dune Part 2, all sorts of stuff. But if you are curious as to what I thought about that first season before we roll into the first episode of season 2, I didn't like it very much. I thought that despite being longer in raw minutes per over the course of the season than the season of television that it's adapting, it cut out way too much content. There were way too many contrivances. I was very frustrated that like every character was an Omashu for some reason. Everybody's an Omashu. Jet, Azula, the mechanic from the Northern Air Temple. Like, why is everybody in Omashu at the same time? It's so weird. Speaking of Omashu, I didn't really like Boomy very much either. I don't know. I thought that the dialogue does way too much to like over-explain everything. There's no retroactive context that's being given. You know, the first half of the first episode, it felt like is all about 100 years ago and the comet and the invasion, and it's like, can you let some of that stuff unfold over the course of the story being shown to us? I didn't really like Sokka very much. They sanded away all of his edges, so there's not necessarily a whole lot of organic drama that takes place surrounding the character. He and Suki have very strange sexual tension right away, and it legitimately made me uncomfortable to watch the episode. And I was watching it with my little sister who had just seen the original show, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to show her the rest of the episode. But yeah, I don't know. The show tries too hard to be mature while also being extremely surface level compared to the original show, which is a cartoon for children. And I say that because I was a child when it came out. And that's not to say that you don't get more out of it watching it as an adult. Honestly, if you have not seen the original show since you were a child, you should watch it again. You'd be surprised what it has to say about grief and survivor's guilt and imposter syndrome and loneliness and isolation and friendship and everything, really. But the live action show just really falls flat on its face and does not capture any of that. I'm also really frustrated that Aang does not waterbend the whole season. The whole first season, he does no waterbending. But I guess that's everything I have to say about... Oh, I also didn't like the Agni Kai between Ozai and Zuko. First of all, I don't like how much they show Ozai. In the original show, you may recall, you do not see Ozai's face until the third season because it's supposed to keep him mysterious. And then when you do finally see him and he kind of just looks like a regular guy, you're like, oh, how can this guy be capable of such great evil that we've heard about him doing and seeing in flashbacks? But they show him in full, and there's a flashback scene to the Agni Kai, which is a lot more like a duel in the live action, whereas in the original, it's over immediately because Ozai just burns Zuko's face because he refuses to fight. In the remake, it is a fight, it's very back and forth, and then Zuko wins. But then he shows mercy to his father. Ozai doesn't like that, that's why he burns him. And then he checks on him to see if he's okay afterwards. Getting very mixed messages as to whether or not Ozai actually cares about his son. And then, it kind of just goes to show that the live action version of the series is trying so hard to sand away the edges of every single character. Nobody can be perceived to be weird or evil. Like, you guys might remember Iroh has that really weird, kind of creepy moment with June. They took that out. That's fine, I guess. But they also took out pretty much everything bad Zuko does. He really just does not seem that bad in the show. I don't know. It just kind of, I don't know. Anyway, moving on to season 2. I only watched one episode, so imagine my surprise when I saw a tweet from Netflix a few weeks before the season came out, showing the Serpent's Pass, and the caption is like, would you guys believe us if we said this was the first episode? And in my mind, I'm like, I'd really like to not believe you, because there's no way you're doing the Serpent's Pass right away. Oh, but they do. They do, yeah. They get to Amashu pretty much right at the beginning of the episode, because we already did the Cave of Two Lovers in season 1 with Sokka and Katana for some reason, in Omashu with everybody else at the same time. Also skipping over the first episode of season 2, the Avatar State, which is, you know, where we see the Earth Kingdom try to weaponize the Avatar State and try to... It kind of sets the tone for what the season is about. It's about choice, right? So, right in that first episode, it's like, at some point is going to have to choose between the Avatar State and Katara. And then that comes around in the season finale. We're skipping all of that groundwork. So whatever happens in the finale is going to ring hollow. But another thing that gets skipped by not including that part of the story is Aang's aversion to using the Avatar State. He kind of goes out of his way to avoid using the Avatar State for a lot of season 2 because of that. But since we skipped that, we need a different reason for him to not want to use the Avatar State, and it's he felt violated after surrendering himself to the Ocean Spirit. That wasn't the Avatar State, though, right? I think it's pretty clear when Aang goes. I know that visually it looks the same when an Avatar goes into the Avatar State, or when they're, you know, communing with the spirits, but he was very clearly communing with the spirits, right? He was possessed by the Ocean Spirit. But whatever. Yeah, there's some weird stuff going on right away. Like Aang finds Boomy and he tries to break him out because he's like, hey, I need an earthbending teacher. And instead of Boomy being, you know, basically trapped in a metal casket that only left his face exposed, he's just in a room eating grapes and nuts and stuff and crackers. So I have a hard time understanding in character, or even in universe, why the Fire Nation aren't expecting him to like do something at some point. The reason that they bound him so, you know, early in the original show is because Boomy is among the most powerful earthbenders who have ever lived. And they know he's dangerous, and they thought it was suspicious that he surrendered so easily as soon as they showed up, but he did that to protect his people so that nobody would be hurt in the fallout or in the collateral damage of full-scale resistance. So Boomy, who has his understanding of neutral Jing, is like, the time to fight back will come. This is not it. So he surrenders. Fire Nation thinks that that's extraordinarily strange, so they bind his entire body, but they did not restrain his face, so he can still earthbend. That's supposed to be a big reveal, but you're gonna miss out on that based on the fact that his entire body is unrestrained. Yeah. Oh, oops. So then Aang and the gang just kind of run into the Kyoshi warriors because, and they're in this forest, and it's like, hey, we gotta get somewhere, but the Fire Nation has a blockade on the southern border, so we need to take the Serpent's Pass. Now, the thing about the Serpent's Pass is that the episode itself isn't necessarily overly important when it comes to the events of season 2, but it's the characterization that we get, especially from Aang, because in the original, this is after they visit the library. So Appa has been lost, and Aang believes that the only thing that he has left of the world that he came from is completely gone. He is now all that's left of the air nomads as they used to exist. Yes, he does still have Momo, but he didn't have Momo 100 years ago. His bond with Momo will never come close to his bond with Appa. So for him, losing Appa is the worst thing that could possibly ever happen. So he's heartbroken, he's beside himself, he's acting out of character during this part of the story because he's stricken with grief. Well, in this version of the story, Appa's right there. So why are they even going to the pass? You know, Aang is just a little frustrated because like nobody seems to be doing what he thinks they ought to do. That's not very interesting though. And it's also it's funny because at the end of season 1, when the Fire Nation show up at the Northern Water Tribe, Aang goes out there to try to take down as many ships as he can by himself. He's only able to do one at a time. And when he sees the sheer scale of this invasion, he realizes he can't do it by himself. And they're like, well, you have to. And he says, they're like, you have to, you're the Avatar. He's like, I'm just one kid. He doesn't say that in the Netflix version of it, though. He says it to another kid in this episode of season 2. You know, they're trying to go across the Serpent's Pass. These kids are paralyzed with fear. And one of them goes, I'm just a kid. And Aang goes, so am I. But he's older in this season than we ever saw him in the original show. Like, I know Gordon was a little kid when he got cast, but in this season, he's like 15 or 16 years old. The actor is currently 17 years old. For him to say, I'm just a kid, while talking to a child who's maybe 7 or 8 years old is actually ridiculous, and I could not stop laughing for a couple minutes there because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But another thing, you may remember that there was a sign right over the entrance to the pass that's like, oh, abandon all hope. And there's this pregnant woman that I believe is the same pregnant woman that Zuko chooses not to rob in Zuko Alone. And she's like, well, how could they say something so terrible? Hope is all we have. And Aang, because he's so hurt emotionally, is like, well, the air nomads believed in, you know, detachment from the material. So maybe they were right. Maybe we should abandon all hope. He supports what the sign says because he's so heartbroken. But in the live action version of it, he just blows the sign down with some airbending. Like, I know that Aang is a very optimistic character, but he is allowed to have low moments. He is allowed to have some edge to the character. You're sanding away everything that makes him complex until he's just a circle. A circle does not make a character. There's like no imperfections to his characterization. There's nothing to even have meaningful discussions about because he's just so perfect. And don't even get me started on Sokka and Suki. They meet in this episode for the first time in what's probably years, right? In the show, in the original show, the timeline is closer to maybe 10 months. Here, years have already passed between seasons 1 and 2. Sokka and Suki have not seen each other in years, and honestly, in my mind, if years have passed, why has Aang not yet found an earthbending teacher? Has he spent all that time mastering water? Because if so, he should be nothing short of a waterbending legend, but whatever. Sokka and Suki meet each other again for the first time in months, and they just get together right away. And it's so strange to me because, like, I know that it's a meme, you know, it's one of the things Sokka's known for is getting so much play. Nobody has more Riz in the whole world of Avatar than Sokka. I get that. We have confirmed Suki and Yue, and there was something a little bit going on between him and Ty Lee, and he probably is the father of one of Toph's children at least. I get that. But this version of Sokka has none of the charm, none of the flair, none of the charisma, none of the characterization, nothing resembling the arc of the original Sokka. No reason for me to believe that this guy could be considered to be so attractive and so in demand by so many of the women in this world. I don't get it. And there's a part where like he and Aang are talking, and Aang's like, it's hard to explain, you know, what's going on with me in the Avatar state. But like, Sokka's like, if you want to talk about it, I'm here. And Aang goes, if you want to talk about Yue, I'm here. Years have gone by. Have they not said a word about what happened in season 1 until just now? What's going on? And then, yeah, obviously, I mean, everything with Azula is weird. I don't like the way that she treats Mai and Ty Lee, which is interesting to say when you consider how she treated them in the original show. But you can tell that she truly did value what Mai and Ty Lee thought she trusted them. She didn't just use them like pawns. They were her friends, or at least with the very stunted, limited understanding of friendship that a character like Azula would have at that point in her life. So it was weird for her to treat them as expendable, considering that like the thing that made her go crazy in the original show was them turning on her. If she doesn't value them, then that's not going to hit the same in season 3. There's some weird like subterfuge going on between her and some member of the fucking royal court. I dropped a bottle on the floor. Her and some fucking random ass member of the royal court. I don't remember his name, but he's like, oh, everything that I do is in service of you, not the Fire Lord. I'm like, okay, well that's weird. Like, what's going on? Like, we can't start doing that the very moment Azula becomes an active part of the story. We have to lay some groundwork first. We have to show what she's capable of and why she should be feared on the same level of, if not more than, her father. Speaking of her father, he's like, yeah, bring Zuko home. For what? For what? In the original, Zuko was sent to basically clean up Zuko's mess, do what he could not. She was gonna bring Zuko and Ozai back home to be killed. But this hasn't even happened yet in this part of the story. When we see when we see Iroh and Zuko, they've already cut their hair, and Zuko's hair has grown out to like what it pretty much will look like for the rest of the show. And that's frustrating because in my mind, Zuko's hair is reflective of what part in his arc he's currently at. He's supposed to be pretty much bald at the very beginning of season 2. Like, his hair is growing out because like the most time passes within one season in season 2, and you can tell by Zuko's hair growth. But if his hair at the beginning of the season looks how it's going to look at the end, then what, the season takes place over a couple weeks maybe, instead of the maybe 3 or 4 months that it actually takes place over. Like, I don't understand the point of that either. And there's like when he and Iroh break up, which isn't supposed to happen yet, it's like, well, if you had successfully taken Ba Sing Se, then my father wouldn't be Fire Lord and I wouldn't have gone through any of this. And I'm like, this feels very out of nowhere. And I don't necessarily hate the idea of introducing drama that was not in the original, but it has to feel less manufactured, because it feels like all of the tension that was building towards this moment, all of the resentment and the anger and maybe even the hatred that Zuko started to feel for his uncle, happened off screen. It's like the only thing that happened off screen, because I just remembered, I mentioned earlier, maybe Aang has become a great waterbender since the years have gone by, but I remembered he doesn't even know how to use waterbending to heal people yet, because he wants Katara to use the Spirit Oasis water to heal the serpent after they fight it. And Katara's like, well, we don't need to do that. If we work together, we can heal him just fine with regular water. Aang's like, I don't know how to do that. You've been waterbending training for what, 3 fucking years, and you don't know how to. And then so like the convergence of Zuko and Azula's stories, it's gonna come as a surprise to Zuko when he runs into her, because she's also going after the Avatar to find Zuko, when it was supposed to be I'm going after the Avatar to do what Zuko could not do because I'm better than him. And I don't know, at the end of season 1, I found myself very displeased with what we had been given, but also optimistic in a very similar way that I was to finishing Percy Jackson the Olympians season 1, because I was like, well, I did not love what we had here. I'm optimistic because there's enough material to learn, to build from what we have, and to get towards actually having something good here. There's a potential great series buried just beneath the surface, but they didn't want to give it to us. Just like with Percy Jackson, season 2 somehow makes me even angrier right from the very beginning. And so yeah, unfortunately I can't really give you a breakdown or a review of like the entire season like I had initially wanted to. I haven't really talked about Katara in this entire video, because there is nothing to say about Katara other than the fact that we're talking about the Painted Lady right at the beginning of season 2 for some reason. I don't know. There's just nothing to say about Katara. I mean, there's plenty to say about the show itself, but I I choose life, and so I'm not gonna watch this whole season. And when season 3 drops, unfortunately, I'm not gonna be able to give you any content on it because I can't do this anymore. I've been through so much of it, and I've really just had enough. But what's your favorite live action adaptation of an animated product? For me, I really like the One Piece live action. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I had a great time watching it. Whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below. Please let me know, and go ahead and subscribe while you're down there. I got to get back in the habit of like asking people to subscribe, but that's all I got for you today. I'll see you later.